Hi class, so welcome back to our subject, Organization and Management. So our lesson for today is all about controlling. So this is the last function of the management that we are going to discuss. So if you can remember or if you can recall, we already discussed planning, staffing, leading, and organizing. So for today, we're going to discuss controlling. So before we start, let's have a quick introduction of controlling. So controlling is a management function wherein we ensure that the work performance of the organization's members are aligned with the organization's values and standards through monitoring, comparing, and correcting their actions. So, para siyang luxurious car na walang gasoline. So, para siyang business na hindi naman na manage ng ayos or hindi na manage ng ayos yung mga resources or yung mga funds. So, like that luxurious car who needs that vehicle na hindi mo naman kayang patakbuhin. So, parang business, hindi may kailangan ng business sa ganon, but hindi naman siya kayang i-manage or i-control ng maayos. So, parang mapuput into waste lang yung mga resources na pinut up dun sa business or dun sa organization. So, that's why it is very important that the management really knows how to control the resources. And also, not just the resources, but also, kinokontrol din nila yung performance or they are ensuring that the performance of the members is aligned with the values and the standards of the organization. So, through monitoring, again, comparing and correcting the actions, so magiging na or mas nagiging maayos yung pagkocontrol dun sa organization. So, we are going to discuss more of this later on. So, under Chapter 7, we're going to discuss three main lesson or topics. First is the definition and nature of management control. Next is the control methods and systems. And for the last lesson, it will be application of management control in accounting and marketing concepts and techniques. Lesson 1, definition and nature of management control. So previously or during the introduction of controlling, we said that controlling is a management function wherein we ensure that the performance of the organization's members are aligned with the organization's values and standards. But also under management control, the management need to make sure that the firm's operating cash flow is sufficient, efficient, and if possible, profitable when invested. So, ibig sabihin, yung controlling, hindi lang siya dun sa mga employees mo, but also to your resources as a whole. 'Di ba? Resources, it can be your human resources and also resources in the form of the cash, in form of your inventories, or in form of your assets. So, kailangan lahat is maayos yung pagkocontrol. So, as you can see here, it is important to make sure na yung operating cash natin is sufficient and efficient and, if possible, profitable. So, the ultimate goal of an organization is to earn profit. That's why one of the things that you need to make sure is that you're earning. And at the same time, kailangan sufficient siya para dun sa operation ng business mo. Like you can pay for the salaries of your employees or you can pay for the day-to-day normal expenses of your business. Why do you think na ito yung isa sa mga hina-highlight when we talk about control? Kasi, cash is very revolving in any business. So, ibig sabihin, madali yung paglabas and pagpasok ng pera. So, if you don't have a proper control or management of that, so mas madali kang manakawan. Like, for example, you don't have things or some activities na hindi mo na make sure na maayos yung recording ng mga cash na nare-receive mo. So, it is susceptible na yung mga employees mo mas madaling makapagnakaw sa'yo. Wherein, magiging pangit or eventually, makikita din yon sa records and baka in the near future, ito pa yung maging sanhi kung bakit mapabagsak yung business. So, that's why management is or management control is very important. So, it doesn't involve only the operating cash flow, but yung day-to-day activities or yung mga nangyayari sa management that involves, of course, for the business to operate. So, in addition, we have the control process. So, control techniques used for controlling financial resources, office management, quality assurance, and others are essentially the same. So, typical control process involves establishing standards, measuring and reporting actual performance, and comparing it with standards, and taking action. So the first one in the control process is establishing standards. So it means setting criteria for performance. So the managers must identify priority activities that have to be controlled, followed by determining how these activities must be properly sequenced. So in doing so, managers will be able to set key performance standards that need to be achieved. So the value chain or the proper sequencing of activities needed to convert the company's raw materials into finished goods is a valuable instrument for helping managers determine and establish key performance standards. So parang So here in establishing standards, para siyang, kunyari, meron kang pa-contest or pa-singing contest. So before sumalang or kumanta yung mga contestant, yung management and then yung judges, nagsiset sila ng criteria for judging. So it is the same in organization or businesses. So you're setting criteria for performance of your employees na doon mo parang i-gauge yung ginagawa nila or yung nangyayari dun sa organization mo. So, from there, nagkakaroon ka ng standard. So, again, hindi lang siya sa performance ng mga employees, but also sa performance or dun sa activities that are happening in your business. Next is measuring and reporting actual performance and comparing it with set standards. So it is essentially the monitoring of performance. So to be able to do this, managers must develop appropriate information systems which will help them identify, collect, organize, and disseminate information. Managers are able to control facts and figures called data and information which have been given meaning and considered to have value. Analysis of data or information gathered measure actual performance and comparing it with set standards serve as a means for detecting deviations. And those deviations must be revealed as early as possible in order to correct them. So, under this monitoring of the performance, so usually meron ngang mga information systems, especially if it is a big organization or business. So, parang mas madali yung pag-collect or pag-identify ng mga data and then madali mo din siya maiko-compare dun sa sinet mong standards. So, if meron kang deviation or parang kakulangan or hindi na-meet yung standards. So, as early as possible, kailangan banggitin mo na agad siya or i-relay mo na talaga agad siya. And that is for to be able to parang mas madali or mas maaga, mas maaagapan para mas madali mo silang mako-correct din. So the last step under the control process is taking action. So it involves the correction of deviations from set standards. So this activity clearly shows the control function of management. Managers may rectify deviations by modifying their plans or goals, by improving the training of employees, by firing inefficient subordinates, or by practicing more effective leadership techniques. So, through those things, yun yung parang taking action mo na dun sa nakita mong deviations. Like, di ba, nag-set ka ng standards and then you measure and then you report yung comparison or yung difference between the set standards and in the actual performance or the activities within the organization. And then now you take the action. So, ito na talaga yung control function ng mga managers. So, ano na ba yung magiging solution nila kung bakit nagkaroon nung mga deviations na yon? So, if nakikita nila na parang technical problems lang naman, so they can train more their employees. Or if meron talagang sobrang inefficient na subordinates, then they need to make a decision to fire him or her. And then, or if nakikita naman nila na parang sa side nila as leaders, yung parang nagkakaroon ng dahilan kung bakit nagkakaroon ng mga deviations, so parang mas kailangan nilang progress or mag-practice ng effective leadership techniques. So, that's the control process sa organization and management. Next lesson is all about control methods and systems. Control methods are techniques used for measuring an organization's financial stability, efficiency, effectiveness, production output, and organization members' attitude and morale. So, from the general point of view, managerial effectiveness must be concerned with the maximizing of the above-mentioned factors that are measured by the control methods. So, therefore, the challenge for present-day managers is to devise control methods and systems that are aligned and consistent and will help attain these concerns. So, meaning, ang kailangang mag-devise ng control methods is yung mga managers. So, kailangan nilang i-assure na yung mga factors na to is magiging maayos or makokontrol nila ng maayos through those control methods and systems. So for today, we will be discussing what are the control methods. So we have quantitative methods and non-quantitative methods. So, the firm may apply control techniques or methods which either be these two. So, ano nga ba yung difference nila? So, let's start with quantitative methods. Quantitative methods are methods which make use of data and different tools expressed in members for monitoring and controlling production output. So, ibig sabihin dito, meron ka talagang actual na kino-quantify. So, meron tayong quantity. So, it can be numbers or certain outputs. So, like that. So, under quantitative methods, we have charts, budgets, and audit. So, let's discuss first charts. Charts is the most widely recognized quantitative tool. So, it is used as control tools, normally contrast time and performance. So, the visual impact of a chart often provides the quickest method of relating data. So, ibig sabihin, dito sa mga chart, di ba, pag nagagawa tayo ng chart, mas madali nating makikita yung parang current situation or current na nangyayari through charts. So, let's head to the next slide. So, as you can see here, this chart shows the sales trend. So, for condo and co-op, ito yung parang performance or ito yung nangyayari, and then singles family, and then for the total, ito. So, parang siya yung mas madali agad nating makikita, or if it is displayed graphically, madali nating ma-check yung mga quantity or yung mga data or information na meron tayo. So, if the managers use this control method, makikita nila agad yung parang performance or yung mga nangyari, and then they can identify what are the reasons behind this, and moving forward, what are the actions for them by just looking at this chart. So that's the use of this chart or quantitative method. Another quantitative method is budgets. So, budget remains the best known control device. So, it is an expression in financial terms of a plan for meeting the organization's goal for a specific period. A budget is an instrument of planning, management, and control. So, di ba, kapag sinabi nating budget, so parang nagpa-plan tayo, and then minamanage natin siya, and then at the same time, we control. So, ano yung kino-control natin? So, yung mga finances natin. So, yun yung ibig sabihin kung bakit tayo nagba-budget. So, budgets are used in two ways. So the first one is to establish facts that must be taken into account during planning. So ano yung ibig sabihin nito? So from previous data, or from the data of your competitors, or from the actual data, or the based on the actual market that is happening currently, so para nakakapag-establish ka ng mga facts na pwede mong gamitin sa pagpaplano. Like for example, for this year, hanggang magkano yung kaya nating ubusin, for example, for utilities expense, or for the salaries of the employees, or nagkano for example yung iba-budget natin na ibebentang gantong products. So, dito yung parang ini-establish mo yung facts na pwede mong gamitin dun sa pagpaplano mo. And the next one is to prepare a description and financial information to be used by chain of command to request for and manage funds. So, once na nakapag-establish siya nung facts, and then na-take into consider mo na siya dun sa planning, so makakagawa ka na ng budget, and then makakapag-prepare ka na ng proper description and financial information na kailangan mong gamitin para, for example, sa tingin mo, ito talaga yung kailangan nating iset na budget for this expense. So, parang mas ma-manage natin yung funds, and then makapag-request tayo dun sa mga upper or higher ups for this certain expense na sa tingin talaga natin, and based on facts na kulang, for example, yung gantong budget. So, usually, in the government, ginagamit din nila to, yung pagbabudget, especially, wala naman silang clear na alam kung magkano yung expenses na, for example, ma-incur nila per year. Kaya kung malalaman nyo, or if you are aware of, na 'di ba nagkakaroon ng hearing for certain budgets of different government bodies. Like for example, yung sa DepEd, yung sa DTI. So parang meron silang kanya-kanyang budget. So, yun yung quantitative method na ginagamit nila. So another quantitative method is audit. So it measures and evaluates the effectiveness of management controls. So under audit surveys or audit, there is a independent person or group of people na magko-quantify or mag-check or mag-audit ng mga operations, ng mga programs, activities, and also the finances, especially the financial statements. So, ang gagawin nila sa pag-audit is to check if yung proper controls ba ay talagang maayos na nai-implement. Kasi, di ba, for example, maganda talaga yung control methods ng isang organization, but if it is not properly implemented, so parang baliwala lang din, di ba? So, through audit, check nila if talaga bang nagiging maayos yung controls, or if talagang nagagawa. And then, at the same time, if yung utilization ng funds and yung resources is properly managed, properly recorded, and if lahat ba talaga is um, truthful. So, iyon yung chine-check ng audit. So, like yung kanina, 'di ba? Example natin yung sa government. So, meron tayong tinatawag na Commission on Audit. So, sila yung nag-audit ng mga budget or yung mga finances or yung mga operations na nangyayari dun sa mga government bodies natin. So, yun. So, chine-check nila yung mga programs, yung mga activities, and then yung mga systems. So, if you're planning to take up accountancy, under the accountancy program, pag-aaralan nyo din tong audit. We have the auditing theory, auditing problems. So, hindi lang yung mismong processes. So, but also yung mga actual na nangyayari dun sa parang financial statements ng mga businesses. So, the accountants or CPAs can also be auditors. And usually, ganun talaga yung nangyayari. So, in order for you to practice audit, so you must be a certified public accountant. So, that's the quantitative methods. Again, we have charts, budgets, and audit. So, now, let's discuss what is non-quantitative. Non-quantitative methods. So, these methods refer to the overall control of performance instead for only of specific organizational processes. So, ito na yung overall control. So, we have inspections, reports, direct supervision, on-the-spot checking, performance evaluation, and counseling. So, as you can see, dun sa quantitative method, meron talaga tayong quantity na chine-check or meron tayong naka-quantify. Pero dito sa non-quantitative, wala. So, it is more of the control na meron dun sa organization and then i-check mo yung overall nun as to their performances or processes. So, aside from the quantitative and non-quantitative methods, so we also have other control methods. So, it include feed-forward control, concurrent control, feedback control, employee discipline, and project management control. So, first one, feed-forward control. So, it prevents problems because managerial action is taken before the actual problem occurs. So, ito yung control na bago pa mangyari yung actual problem, so meron ka ng control or meron ka ng ginagawa para ma-prevent yung mga ganong problema. So, ito yung tinatawag natin na feed-forward control. So, for example, in factories, so nagsiset ka ng alarm na, for example, umabot sa gantong temperature yung factory natin. So, para mag-a-alarm siya. So, para maiwasan natin yung over temperature na, for example, very vital dun sa business mo or dun sa mga products na pinoproduce mo. So, that's feed-forward control. So, next one is concurrent control. So, it takes place while work activity is happening. One example of this is tracking by GPS so that the managers can monitor the company vehicles. So, madedetermine ni managers kung saan papunta yung vehicles or if nakapunta talaga sila dun sa actual destinations, and also they can check the speed of the delivery between the destinations na kailangan nilang puntahan or ipag-deliver. So, through that, nagkakaroon sila ng control as to kung paano yung nangyayari or the actual activity or process na nangyayari during the delivery. Next one is feedback control. So, it is a control that takes place after the occurrence of the activity. So, after nung certain activity, humihingi kayo ng feedback kung ano yung nangyari dun sa activity na yon, kung ano yung comments or yung suggestions. So, usually, di ba, katulad ng mga ginagawa namin na teachers, so, after the lesson or after the discussion or after the activity, we ask for feedback So, kung ano yung, for example, kung ano yung natutunan nyo or kung saan kayo nahirapan or what are your comments or suggestion in order to improve the current activity or the current process of the discussion. So, that's feedback control. So, if the managers will choose one of these first three other control methods, so pipiliin nila yung feed forward. So, bakit? Because it is a preventive action. 'Di ba? Meron nga tayong kasabihan na prevention is better than cure. So, under concurrent control pala, its advantage is that it can help managers correct problems before they become too costly or damaging. Kasi nga, di ba, yung control natin for concurrent is nagtitake place during the activity. So, bago pa maging sobrang damaging, so, makakatulong na agad siya kay manager para maiwasan yon. So, kay feedback control naman, so, ang advantage niya is that it exhibits variance between the standard and the actual performance. Kasi, di ba, it takes place after the actual activity. So, little variance indicates that the planning is successful, while if there is a significant variance, so it may give the managers an idea of how to plan better. So, yan yung parang or dyan nagagamit nung mga managers yung gantong control methods. So, in addition to other control methods, we have employee discipline. So, it is a control challenge for managers. So, why? It is because enforcing discipline in a workplace is not easy. So, there are concerns regarding this, including workplace privacy, employee theft, and workplace violence, among others. So, parang yung pag-discipline is pwede siyang mag-start from simple monitoring of employees' computer usage. Like for example, bawal mag-Facebook, bawal mag-check ng kung ano-ano, kailangan lang talaga gamitin si computer for work-related items. And then, it can go beyond to protecting employees at work from psychologically unstable workers who may have hidden desires to harm them. So, managers need discipline control to ensure that the task can be efficiently and effectively carried out as planned. So, parang gumagawa sila or gumagawa yung mga managers ng discipline control para ma-make sure na parang malalayo din sa harm yung mga employees. And then, if magiging okay lahat, if properly manage and control yung parang employees natin, so yung mga plans and other operations under the business can be carried out efficiently and effectively. And then the last one is the project management control. So this ensures that the task of getting a project's activities done on time, within the budget, and according to specifications is successfully carried out. So, project managers need technical and interpersonal skills to control the implementation of the project efficiently and effectively. So, kasi itong mga project na to, usually there's a deadline na kailangan by this time, tapos na to. And at the same time, it can also affect the budget. Kasi for certain project, meron ka lang inaalat na budget dyan. So, usually, if it exceeds beyond the time or beyond the deadline, so most probably, the budget will also exceed. So, kailangan mas maayos yung pagpa-plan and pagko-control nung implementation nung project na to. So, the project planning process controls include defining the objectives, identifying activities and resources, establishing sequence and estimating time for activities, determining the project completion date, and comparing with objectives and determining additional resource requirements. So again, those are the other control methods. So after discussing the definition and the nature of management control and then the control methods and systems, so let's head to the last topic under controlling, which is the application of management control in accounting and marketing concepts and techniques. So for quick introduction, a recap for the ABM 12 and a introduction of accounting to ABM 11. So accounting is a service activity. Its function is to provide quantitative information, primarily financial in nature, about economic entities that is intended to be useful in making economic decisions. So, accounting is also the art of recording, classifying, and summarizing in a significant manner and in terms of money, transactions, and events, which are in part at least of financial character and interpreting the results thereof. So, management control in accounting and finance is the control that makes use of the balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow to analyze and examine financial statements in order to determine the company's financial soundness and viability, as well as the financial ratios to determine the company's stability. So I guess for ABM 11, you've already encountered this balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement as we have already discussed this during accounting part 2. But for ABM 11, so it can be alien word for you. This balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement are part of the financial statements that are being made or that the companies or organizations have. So they use these statements to analyze and examine the the company's performance or the results of their operation. So through the financial ratios and the amounts or the reports that included in those statements or in those financial statements. So, madedetermine yung company's stability. On the other hand, marketing refers to activities a company undertakes to promote the buying or selling of a product or service. So it thus includes advertising, selling, and delivering products to consumers or other businesses. So the management control in marketing is a control that makes use of projected sales or forecasts, statistical models, econometric modeling, surveys, historical demand data, and actual consumption of their products. So, why is it important? So, in business, sales is considered to be the lifeblood of the business. So, without sales, walang kikitain sa company. So, marketing, since ito yung activity wherein you promote the selling of your product or your service, so it is very vital na meron kang management control sa pagmamarket. So again, it relates with the sales, which is the lifeblood of the business. So let's discuss more on how can we do the management control in accounting and in marketing. So, as I told you earlier, in accounting, we do or we make use of the financial ratios in order to determine the company's stability or the current performance or the results of the operation of the business. So, from the amounts that are recorded or reported in the financial statements, so we have some ratios para ma-check if um, ano ba yung nagiging lagay nung business natin. So, the goal of business, of course, is to gain profit. So, in order to achieve this, managers need accounting and financial controls. Kasi again, babalik na naman tayo na kailangan properly recorded lahat ng accounting transactions and lahat ng nangyayari dun sa business para properly accounted of siya. So, managers must also analyze the organization's financial condition, which is done with the help of the following financial ratios. So, in accounting, di ba magsisimula siya sa journalizing or the recording of the transactions, then it will go to up to the preparation of the financial statements. So, hindi lang siya matatapos dun sa preparation ng financial statements. So, kailangan meron din tayong pag-analyze nung financial statements na yon para mas makapag-come up tayo with better planning or better solutions from the previous operation or mga previous activities na nangyari dun sa businesses natin. Kasi nga, again, those financial statements are the results of or the performance of your business. So, through these financial ratios na nakaset up, mas ma-check pa natin or mas ma-analyze pa natin yung accounting side or yung finance side ng business. So, for ABM 12, this is actually a recap or review of what we have discussed last semester under the analysis and interpretation of the financial statements. So previously, we've talked about or we've discussed with so many financial ratios or accounting ratios. But for the sake of the ABM 11 students who doesn't have their accounting subject, so I trimmed down or I just included the most important ratios or yung mga basic ratios under accounting or financial control. So under accounting or financial control ratios, we have liquidity ratio, activity ratio, leverage ratio, and profitability ratio. So first one is the liquidity ratio. So it tests the organization's ability to meet short-term obligations. It may also refer to as a test done when inventories turn over slowly or are difficult to sell. So what do we mean by liquidity or bakit siya natin tinawag na liquidity ratio? So ano ba yung properties ng liquid? So for example, we have a water and then nilagay natin siya sa baso. So, yung magiging shape na ng liquid is same dun sa pinaglagyan niya. So, dun sa baso. Like, for example, ilagay naman natin siya sa plastic. So, pag nilagay natin siya sa plastic, yung magiging shape niya is kung ano din yung shape ng plastic. So, in business, business liquidity is determined by how quickly a business can convert its asset into cash. So, parang in broad sense naman, yung liquid natin kanina is kung kaano siya kabilis na magko-convert dun sa parang shape ng baso. Wherein yung sa business, again, going back, is kung gaano mo mako-convert yung asset into cash. Kasi yung cash, siya yung gagamitin natin para for our day-to-day operations or yung mga expenses natin and also for our short-term obligations or yung mga liabilities natin. So that's why our ratio or how can we compute for the current ratio or the liquidity ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities. So again, just a recap for the ABM 12 and for the ABM 11, assets are the resources controlled by the entity wherein future economic benefits are expected to flow in the entity. So, parang in Tagalog, assets are yung mga may halaga na bagay na pag-aari mo or pag-aari ng kumpanya. While current liabilities or liabilities are the present obligations wherein in order for that present obligations to be settled, outflow of the entity is needed. So, liabilities in short is your utang. So, yung mga utang ng kumpanya mo or ng business mo. So, kaya naman natin siya tinawag na current kasi in financial statements, we have current and non-current. So, yung asset and yung liability, it can be current or non-current. So, ibig sabihin, kapag current, the assets are expected to be converted to cash within a year or kung ano yung accounting period. But if we say that it is a non-current asset, so parang mako-convert pa siya or makukuha mo pa yung mga benefit ng assets na yon is magbe-beyond dun sa 1 year. So, same as with liabilities, if you think that within a year, mababayaran mo siya, so it is a current liabilities. But if it will go beyond a year, so ibig sabihin, magiging non-current liabilities na siya. So, parang yung mga utang na hindi mo kayang mabayaran within a year. So, again, kaya siya under liquidity ratio kasi ito nga yung parang test or ability kung saan mas mabilis na makakapag-convert yung mga asset natin into cash para pambayad or pang-meet ng mga short-term obligations natin. Kaya ang directly affected is yung current assets and yung current liabilities natin. Next is leverage ratio. So it determines if the organization is technically insolvent, meaning that the organization's financing is mainly coming from borrowed money or from the owner's investments. So, ang pagiging insolvent ay parang bankrupt or parang para makapag-operate ka, kailangan mo ng umutang ng pera or yung mga utang mo, hindi mo na kayang mabayaran. So, that's the meaning of insolvent. So, that's why here in leverage ratio, our ratio is the debt to assets ratio. So, the total debt or the total liabilities, lahat ng utang mo, i-divide mo dun sa total assets na meron ka. Kasi, paano mo ba mababayaran yung mga liabilities or yung mga utang mo? It is through those assets that you have. So that's why again, under leverage ratio, we have the debt to assets ratio, which is the total debt divided by the total assets. So next is the activity ratio. So it determines if the organization is carrying more inventory than what it needs. So the higher the ratio, the more efficiently inventory assets are being used. So here in activity ratio, it involves with the inventory. So ano ba yung inventory? Inventory are the goods or yung mga pagmamay-ari ng business na ibebenta nila or binebenta nila. So, yun yung parang source of income nila. Like, for example, nagbebenta sila ng lipstick. So, yung inventory nila is yung mga lipstick na yon. So, here in activity ratio, we have the inventory turnover. So, ibig sabihin, kung ilang beses natin nabebenta yung inventory natin for a certain period of time or for example, for a year. So, yun yung mine-measure nitong inventory turnover natin. So, that's why our formula for that is the cost of goods sold. So, ang ibig sabihin po nun is yung halaga ng inventory na binenta natin. So, kasi 'di ba, pag binenta natin siya, syempre papatungan na natin siya ng presyo. So, iyon yung parang sales natin. Pero kapag sinasabi natin cost of goods sold, ito yung halaga ng mismong actual na product. So, kung paano or lahat ng expenses na na-incur para mabuo yung produkto na yon. So, that's the cost of goods sold and then you need to divide it with the average inventory. So, yung inventory, again, is the number of the goods. And then, kaya natin sinasabing average, so it is usually, kasi meron kang beginning inventory and then meron kang ending inventory. So, yung beginning inventory, yung inventory mo at the starting of the year. Like for example, calendar year ka. So, at January 1, for example, yung beginning inventory mo is 10. And then, your ending inventory or yung inventory na hawak mo by December 31, 2020, for example, is 20. So, if you average that, so 10 plus 20 is equals to 30 divided by 2, so that would be 15. So your average inventory is 15. So again, it relates to the inventory turnover or the measure of the number of times inventory is sold or used in a time period such as a year. Next one is the profitability ratio. So it determines the profits that are being generated. So when we say profit, it is different from sales. Kasi yung sales, ito yung total na kinita natin. Like for example, all the units we have or we sold is 10,000 units. And then the selling price or kung magkano natin siya binenta is 2 pesos. So, 2 pesos times the 10,000 units, so that's 20,000. So, our total sales is 20,000. But our profit is different from that. So, let's say that in order for us to come up or to sell that product, we incur certain expenses. Like, for example, the cost of goods sold or the salaries of the employees. So, let's say the total expenses amounts to 5,000. So, if we deduct that 5,000 to the actual sales of 20,000, we have the total profit or net profit of 15,000. So, if there's a given na amount of taxes, so like for example, yung 15,000 wala pa yung tax doon. So, if we deduct, for example, a tax of 2,000, to the 15,000, so magiging 13,000 na lang siya. So, the net profit after taxes is the 13,000. So, again, the difference between that and between profit and sales is that the profit is the net of all the expenses that the company incurred, while total sales is the actual sales that the company had. So another one under profitability ratio is the return on investment. So it measures the efficiency of assets to generate profits. So ito yung parang in return of the investments or of the assets kung magkaano or kung magkano yung mapoprofit natin doon or ma-generate nating profit. So that's why our formula for that is net profit after taxes divided by the total assets. Kasi again, kung paano natin nagamit yung mga asset para makapag-generate ng profit. So again, how to compute return on investment, net profit after taxes divided by the total assets. So, in addition to the above ratios, asset management is also practiced to achieve organizational goals. So, asset management is the ability to use resources efficiently and operate at minimum cost. So, dito, yung resources natin is yung average inventory. So, that's why our formula for this is the inventory turnover. Kasi, if we divide the sales to the average inventory, parang makikita natin kung paano natin nagamit yung average inventory na yon in order to come up with the sales. So, again, inventory turnover equals sales divided by average inventory. So, in addition to our discussion, we need to also discuss strategic control. So, ano nga ba tong strategic control? So, it is a systematic monitoring at control points that leads to the change in the organization's strategies based on the assessments done on the said strategic plans. So, as you can remember, we already discussed the strategic plan. So, these are the long-term directions or goals ng organization or businesses. So, when we say the strategic control, so ito yung pagmamonitor ng mga long-term direction natin or long-term plans ng isang organization. So, ang minsan, based on our assessment, dun sa mga nangyayari dun sa business or the results of the transactions. So, parang nagkakaroon tayo ng parang strategies or parang naiiba yung parang strategies natin or yung mga approach natin para mag-comply pa rin siya dun sa long-term direction or goal ng organization. So, this control provides a chance for comparing the plan's intended goals with the actual organizational performance. So, this becomes the basis for modifications in the firm's strategies. So another one is benchmarking. So this is an approach or process of measuring a company's own services and practices against those of recognized leaders in the industry in order to identify areas for improvement. So this benchmarking is widely used and well accepted approach because it helps organizations gather data and information against which performance can be measured and controlled. So many companies use benchmarking. So some prefer to benchmark only the top 10 or the best companies in their particular industry. So others benchmark best global practices and go further away from their own industry and reason out that their goal is competitive superiority and not just competitive party. So parang dito, meron kang nire-research or ginagather na data na parang pinagko-comparean mo nung current situation or current practices of your company. So from there, parang na-check mo ano ba yung parang gaano tayo kalapit sa kanila or ano pa yung mga kailangan nating gawin para maging katulad. Hindi naman technically para maging katulad. So for example, yun nga, as I told earlier, na usually yung mga top 10 or the best companies. So parang in order for us to be one of the best companies, so parang ginagawa natin silang benchmark of the, parang ginagawa natin silang standard para i-compare yung mga performances or current practices in our organization. So, the benchmarking process begins with determining which company functions are to be benchmarked and the company performance indicators to be measured. Then, the best industry performers have to be identified. So, data gathering and analysis follows, and this become the foundation for performance goals. So, new programs are implemented, and during this step, performance is measured at regular intervals. So, corrective actions are taken to close the gap between the organization and the best-in-class companies. The monitoring of results must be continuous to ensure benchmarking success. So, parang ito din yung control process natin, which is nagkakaroon tayo ng standard. So, in benchmarking, ang nagiging standard natin is yung mga top 10 or best companies or yung para bang parang in term na ina-idolize, parang somehow like that. So, from there, um, ichine-check natin, 'di ba? Sa second step natin is we check our performance on the standards that we have set. And then after that, we take corrective actions or we take actions to close the gap between the actual standards and the performance that we have. So that's the benchmarking. And that's chapter 7, controlling. So again, for this chapter, we have discussed the nature
So
and
for next
definition
week,
of
we're going to
management
discuss
control,
the
the
different
control
functional
methods and
areas in
systems,
management
and the
and the
application
basic
of
concepts
management
of
control
small
in
family
accounting and
business.
marketing
So
concepts
again,
and
class, if you have any
techniques.
question,
Or if you have any concerns, feel free to message me. Again, this is Mizai. Thank you, class, and God bless.